What's your next move when life feels unfair? Let's talk about it. I want to offer a counterintuitive approach to when life offers you a curveball. We'll break it down. We'll talk about why this approach works, why it might be counter to conventional wisdom, and how you can do this right where you are, no matter the situation. I'm going to start with a personal story because this is where I've been working with this on a personal level. And it's funny because I was talking to a friend about it recently and he said, "This is your next newsletter article." But I had to really work through it a little longer because this one really got to me. So I'll share with you. I was in a personal interaction with someone recently in which I really felt proud of myself. I felt proud of myself because I had done all the things better and differently than I had typically done in these types of collaborations. I had good boundaries. I felt really good about my communication. I felt that I really protected the things that were important to me and communicated those. I felt that I showed up fully and gave of myself. And what resulted was a couple different things that really surprised me. One was that I lost money, which I know for any of us, like anytime we lose money, right, it cuts pretty deep. And the second one was I didn't feel that the person acknowledged what I had done. And I felt the results were subpar. That wasn't what I thought was going to happen with this. I was super excited. So if I were to kind of relay the emotional roller coaster of this situation, it started out with high excitement, eagerness, inspiration, and then it kind of went into a little bit of apprehension and questioning, and then it went into frustration, then it went into anger, then it went into resentment, then it went into more frustration, more anger, and then just a feeling of hopelessness or loss or confusion. And I cycled through this for quite a while. And so I was really just dumbfounded. I felt like my mind was just full of the questions, like, what did I do wrong? How did I not see this coming? Was I a bad judge of character? How could I have prevented this? What was life trying to teach me? Just the questions, they circled and circled. And the more I talked about it, the more I journaled, the more I did all my traditional methods, I didn't really come up with anything. And it was kind of like the premise that I started with. I just felt like, this is unfair. Why is this happening to me? But then I returned to what I really know in my heart of hearts is true, which is that life is not ever punishing me, that life is always working through me and for me, because I'm creator. And I also know that life is fair, that life is not picking and choosing who gets to have and who doesn't. So I knew that wisdom was true, but I didn't know how to get myself in a place where I wasn't battling and in resistance to life. So that's where I want to go over maybe some of the practices that you've done when you felt in resistance to life or felt like life's unfair, because these are the things that I too had traditionally done. But I had done them and I realized that they didn't really work. But just to review them, because these were really tempting. One of them was the distraction approach. Let's just exercise a lot and get all this anger out and then I'll feel better. And of course, that works to a certain degree. It's good to get kind of offset some of those heavy emotions, but it's only a temporary fix, I found. The second one was just to distract myself in general, just like pour myself into something else and just try to forget about it. But if you've ever tried to forget about something, it generally doesn't work. And it didn't work for me either. And the other two were more protective things like, oh, I'll never get in this type of situation again. I'm going to protect myself, right? But I didn't really like that because that, in essence, puts me in a place of mistrusting, one, myself, and two, mistrusting life. And I'm trying to open to life. So that didn't feel like a really power play. And another was just avoid this person, like just X them out of my life, never talk to them again, like I'm going to show them. But I got back to that same premise of, well, I really want to trust that I can relate to people, that no one's really out to get me. Even if people might show up in ways that I don't prefer, I don't want to walk around feeling like I've got to protect myself or avoid people. That didn't feel like how I wanted to show up. So none of them worked. None of those traditional methods. They all left me feeling like I'm not actually going to get through this. This isn't going to get me what I truly want, which is I wanted peace in this situation. I wanted to be able to move forward and not let this keep taking my energy, because that's really what I got to the conclusion of, is that this situation is stealing my energy. It's allowing me to stay stuck in a feeling of powerlessness and a feeling of I'm on the short end of the stick. This person's walking away with pockets full and hands full, and I'm walking away with empty pockets. And I didn't like the way that felt, and I wanted it to shift. So now I want to introduce you to what I'm calling the genius move when life has you feeling like it's unfair. And I'm going to tell you the name, and you're going to say, I know, because I did the same thing. I already know that move, and I don't really like it because the move is surrender. And I know what you're thinking, because I've always thought the same thing. I looked at surrender being like a kid that just was told, no, you can't have dessert, but you can have an extra helping of broccoli. Like, who wants that, right? And I even like broccoli, but I don't want that. And I always kind of looked at surrender as being, in a sense, like a defeat. Like, you only do that when you're defeated and you realize there's no way forward. And so when I practiced surrender before, it was because I had gone into one or the other polarity. One is that I had really pushed, and I just was exhausted and couldn't push anymore. And the other polarity was when I just knew that I couldn't win. Like, I just was outnumbered, outpowered. And both of those kind of put me on a spectrum of equally feeling powerlessness. So I didn't really like the premise of surrender because it felt like I was admitting defeat. And I really was happy with a lot of the way that I'd shown up. And I didn't really want to think that all that was for nothing or it was because I was defeated. But I want to give you the nuances as to how I investigated surrender to be slightly different than this defeatist or polarized action step that you take almost because you don't have a choice. So let me walk you through this and tell me if this might feel slightly different than the surrender that you've been accustomed to. So there's 4 steps that I think are involved in surrender, and at least in the process that I've identified as the conscious action choice of surrendering. And the first is acceptance. I really had to accept that what happened. I really had to get to the point where I just didn't want to fight it anymore. And I needed to let go of the kind of the mind wrestle of trying to figure it out, to know all the issues surrounding it, and to really just be like, yeah, something happened that I didn't really want to happen. But the choice in this acceptance is you don't have to tell a story about it that is not helpful to you or the other person. So for example, I didn't have to make this into how I messed up, how I failed, how I got cheated. All of that just makes the story hurt even more. It just really puts me more in those emotional states that I was trying to surrender. So in acceptance, I just tell the story. Yeah, I went for something. I gave it my all. I really showed up as best as I could, and I didn't get the result that I wanted. And I accept that. It's really as simple as that. You take out the coloring, you take out the bias, you take out the opinions that just make the story feel worse, that give it kind of like adding fuel to the fire. So that's step 1, really, really getting into an energetic acceptance. So this isn't telling the mind, stop thinking about it. This is, it happened and I can't do anything to change it at this point. Feel the difference? One is you actually be where you are, not where you think you ought to be. Okay, the second is that you release blame. And I had to release blame for myself because I was doing a lot of like, how did I not see this, blah, blah, blah. What did I do wrong? And honestly, maybe I didn't do anything wrong. And maybe there are some things that over time will come to me in the form of wisdom or skillfulness that I'll learn. But at this point, I can't see it because I'm too clouded with the emotions of it. And so I'm just going to release myself from blame because blame does nothing but keep me in this reactionary place. And I had to release the blame for the other person as well. Because even though I could find a list of reasons why I didn't think they showed up in the way I should have, again, that's just my story around it. And if I believe that life is working through me and for me to help me get where I want to go in life, then this person, for some reason, had to show up that way. And I don't know why. And I'm not going to make a story about they're out to hurt me or get me. And maybe they were, and I'll never know that, but it just doesn't help anything. And so I'm just going to release myself because I don't want to stay hooked into this person, right? I don't want to stay hooked into this energy where I feel like I was the victim, because that only breeds more victimhood that I will draw into the rest of my life. I wasn't looking to draw more of that energy in. So release the blame. And then the third is to feel the feelings. Now, this is the really hard part at times because I was feeling a lot of frustration and resentment and anger, and those aren't feelings that I generally like to feel a lot of. But I had to go through the cycle of them. Irregardless of the story around them, you have to feel what you feel. So I had to feel the anger and what it was moving me to want to do or not do. I had to feel the frustration. I had to feel the resignation in some ways, all the different emotions. And to be honest, it lasted a little longer than I would have liked. There were days that I wanted to cry. There were days I wanted to like punch a pillow. And I kind of let myself do those things. I let myself express how I needed to express because I had to let it move through me. Part of when we're in this life's unfair is we're in the resistance and we hold on and the energy can't move and flow through us. So that was step 3. And then step 4, this is the really crucial part of surrender. It's the active choice to give it over. Give it over to a higher power, a higher consciousness, whatever works for you. And for me, it's that I know that there is a universal intelligence within all things. This is the intelligence that lets the sun rise and the moon rise and the oceans ebb and flow and fall to follow summer. It's the intelligence that lets flowers bloom and trees grow, right? I believe in this intelligence, and I believe that this intelligence has more wisdom than me, even though I'm a part of it. So I wanted to just give it over and say, you know what, life, universe, God, goddess, nature, intelligence, whatever you want to call it. I don't know why this happened. I have no idea if I did anything that I need to learn from. I have no idea what the meaning of this is, but I'm just going to give it to you and say, I don't want to struggle with it anymore. So my prayer, and it really was a prayer that I did over and over again, was I release this to you. I don't want to carry it in my body and in my mind and in my emotions. I want to be free of it. Please let me receive the wisdom of this that is necessary for me, and let me allow myself to let go of what I don't need to worry about at this moment. Let me be free of emotions that keep me hooked into patterns of victimhood or reactivity. Allow me to move forward with grace and ease and trust. That was my prayer. And I said this in different words. Every time it would come up in my mind, I would just imagine myself just letting it go, like opening my hand and giving it back. I also did a couple imagery meditations that helped me. And one was that I imagined going to a body of water and just offering it, like throwing a rock in or just kind of sprinkling it out of my hand. I imagined a waterfall at times, just letting it just crash into the water. I even imagined it like a suitcase of all the emotions and the tension, and just setting it at the doorway of a greater power. And so it really doesn't matter what you believe or what you want to give it to. It's just that you don't hold it within yourself. You just say whatever needs to happen can happen, and I don't need to be in the way, and I don't always have to know. And friends, this was really powerful. It wasn't a one and done. This was a every time. And the more I did it, the more I just would exhale. And sometimes I would just stretch and try to make space, because that when we're in resistance or feeling life's fair, we don't feel spacious. Or at least I didn't. So creating space in my body, taking deep breaths, longer exhales, just allowed me to physically, energetically embody what I was really asking for, which was peace, which was to let it out of me and let energy flow. Because really, we know that energy attracts like energy. And when I'm in resistance and when I'm trying so hard to figure it out, when I'm resisting what's happening, that is the energy I'm emitting. That's the energy that I'm going to call more of. And for me, I know that that energy isn't super effective for the life that I wanted to lead. So even though I really wanted to know all the answers, when I let it go, I felt so much freer. I felt so much more at ease and peace. Now, sure, my mind wants to still know, and sure, it comes up every so often, but then I can just exhale and let it go. So this type of surrender is so different than the opposite type of that defeatist surrender, or that polarized surrender, because it's really a conscious choice in every moment to say, I'm choosing this, because no one's making me. I could stay angry with this person. I could stay resentful. I could stay trying to figure it out, and that would be my choice, and no one's going to stop me. But I'm the one that's hurting from that. So this conscious choice is actually an empowered choice of self-love. of being able to say, I want to feel free and I want to keep moving forward. So the difference is one of empowerment, one of choice, and one of realizing the true suffering and who's receiving that when we are in this resistance, and that's us. As much as we want to think it's the other person causing it, it's really our choice to stay in conflict with it. So, what in your life could use some active, conscious choice of surrender? What can you offer into a river, a waterfall? What can you put into a suitcase and give it away that's causing you to feel like life's unfair, or that you have to push or block or protect yourself from what's actually happening? How can you utilize these steps of surrender, of acceptance, releasing blame, feeling your feelings, and physically, energetically, mentally, emotionally, surrendering it to the higher wisdom that's within you, within all things, that can allow life to continue to move forward? Because the sun's going to rise tomorrow. The moon's going to come up tonight, right? And how we choose to be in our life in each moment is truly our choice. I hope that you can find some peace in this practice, and I hope that you can find a new friend in this genius tool called active surrender. Because I really think that it's really the elixir to a lot of the things in life that we rub against, that we push against, that we want to fight against. The world tells us either fight harder or just give up. There is another way, and it's a genius way, and it leverages so much more peace and ease and flow with life. So may you flow with life. May you find peace in active surrender. Blessings to you, friends.